All right, let's dive into something pretty wild today, cognitive warfare. Um, have you ever thought about how much control we really have over our own thoughts and beliefs? Like, is it really us, or could something else be pulling the strings?
It's a question that's more relevant now than ever. I mean, cognitive warfare is a real thing, and it has the potential to be one of the most impactful and honestly unsettling developments we're seeing in modern conflict.
Unsettling is a good word for it. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, controlling people's minds.
Well, it's not mind control in the traditional sense. It's not like people are suddenly becoming puppets. It's much more subtle than that.
Okay, so less like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and more like what?
Think of it more like a sophisticated game of influence. The battlefield isn't a physical location, it's the human mind itself. And the weapons. They're things like information, misinformation, propaganda even, and technology, all designed to shape how we think, what we believe, and ultimately, how we act.
So are we talking about like AI, algorithms, all that stuff being used to basically hack into people's minds and manipulate them?
You could say that, but it's more about subtly shaping perceptions, beliefs, and behaviors. The target might not even realize it's happening.
So how is that different from just plain old propaganda? We've had that forever.
Right, but this is propaganda on steroids, you know? Cognitive warfare uses advanced technology to create these hyper-personalized campaigns that are way more targeted, much more effective. It's like they're custom tailored to exploit your individual
Okay,
weaknesses.
that's kind of creepy. Like those targeted ads we see online. Except instead of trying to sell us a product, it's selling us, I don't know, a political ideology or some crazy conspiracy theory.
Exactly. And with all the data that's being collected about us through social media, online activity, even our phones, it's getting easier and easier to create those kinds of campaigns.
So it's like, imagine an algorithm that can figure out your deepest fears and insecurities and then feed you information that's designed to play on those fears.
Yeah, it can predict what you're most likely to believe, even if it's not true. And the more you see that kind of information, the more it starts to feel real, even if it's completely fabricated.
And this isn't just happening to individuals, right?
Yeah.
It's whole groups of people, even entire countries, could be targeted with this stuff.
Absolutely. It's a tactic that can be used to sow discord and instability, to undermine governments, to basically control the narrative. It's happening all over the world right now.
Okay, so let's say you want to create chaos in a country. You would use cognitive warfare to exploit existing divisions in society, like political differences or social tensions, and then you just amplify those differences, spread some lies, create fear and mistrust.
Exactly. You make people question everything, make them turn against each other, and before you know it, the whole system starts to crumble from within. It's like a
A
virus.
mind virus.
That's a good way to put it. And what makes it so dangerous is that it's often operating below the surface. People don't even realize they're being manipulated. They think they're forming their own opinions, but in reality, someone else is pulling the strings.
So the question is, how do we even fight back against something like that? I mean, if we don't even realize it's happening, how can we defend ourselves?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll be exploring in much more detail in the next part of this deep dive.
I'm already kind of freaked out, but okay, let's do it. We need to figure this out.
Yeah, no doubt. We can't just sit here and let our minds be battlefields. We need to understand the tactics, the players, and most importantly, what we can do to protect ourselves.
I'm ready to fight back. What have we cursed?
First, let's look at how these tactics are playing out in the real world, you know? Specific examples can really help connect the dots.
All right, I'm all ears. Give me some real-world scenarios where this cognitive warfare stuff is actually happening right now.
Well, think about elections, for example. We've seen some really sophisticated disinformation campaigns targeting voters, trying to swing elections. So chaos. It's scary stuff.
Okay, so like fake news and all that, but
Yeah.
this is like next level, right?
Definitely. We're talking about coordinated networks of bots and trolls spreading misinformation, creating fake videos, and even using AI to manipulate people's perceptions of reality.
AI, huh? That's a whole other can of worms. So you're saying that technology is basically being weaponized to mess with our minds, and it's happening right now all around us. This is heavy stuff.
It is, and it's only going to get more sophisticated and more pervasive in the years to come. That's why it's so important to understand how it works and what we can do to protect ourselves.
Right, because if we don't, we're all just sitting ducks.
Hmm.
So what can we do? I mean, where do we even start?
That's what we'll dive into after the break, but I'll give you a hint. It starts with understanding the enemy and understanding ourselves.
Okay, I'm ready to learn. Let's do it.
All right, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Welcome back. We were just diving into some really unsettling stuff, like how cognitive warfare is using technology to, basically mess with our
Yeah,
minds.
we were talking about how this stuff is playing out in the real world, like in elections.
Right, like disinformation campaigns, they're getting so sophisticated, like way beyond just spreading fake news.
So it's like they're using AI to create those deep fakes, those videos that look so real, but are totally fabricated.
Exactly. And it's not just videos, it's audio too. They can make anyone say anything, and it's almost impossible to tell it's fake.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
So it's like they're creating this alternate reality, and it's getting harder and harder to know what's real and what's not.
Yeah, they want to sow doubt, confusion, make people question everything, including their own senses.
That's like they're trying to gaslight us all on a massive scale.
That's a good way to put it. And when people are confused and don't know what to believe, they're much more susceptible to manipulation.
It's like that saying, a confused mind says yes.
Exactly. So it's not just about spreading lies, it's about creating this environment of uncertainty where any narrative can take hold.
And this isn't just some abstract theory, right? This is actually happening, and it's having real-world consequences.
Absolutely. We've seen how these disinformation campaigns can fuel violence, like riots and even civil unrest. They can destabilize entire countries.
Okay, so this is clearly a serious threat, not just to individuals, but to, like, the whole fabric of society. So what can we do about it? Is there any way to push back against this?
There is, but it requires a multi-pronged approach. We need education, regulation, and technological innovation.
Okay, let's break that down. Starting with education, how does that help?
Well, we need to teach people how to be more critical consumers of information, how to spot disinformation, how to evaluate sources.
So it's like media literacy, basically,
Yeah.
helping people become more savvy about what they're seeing online.
Exactly. We can't just passively consume information anymore. We need to be active participants, questioning, verifying, thinking for ourselves.
That makes sense. But education alone isn't enough, is it? We need to talk about regulation too.
Right. We need to have some serious conversations about the role of these tech companies, like social media platforms. They have a lot of power and they need to be held accountable.
So we're talking about things like fact-checking mechanisms, maybe some kind of algorithm that prioritizes credible sources over, the crazy stuff.
Yeah, and we need more transparency about how these platforms are being used to manipulate people. They need to be more open about their algorithms, their data collection practices, all of that.
That's a tough one because those companies are all about profits,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes those profits come from, well, from keeping people hooked on their platforms, even if it means exposing them to harmful content.
It's a tricky balance for sure, but we need to find a way to prioritize the well-being of individuals and society over, the bottom line.
So it's not just about passing laws. It's about changing the whole culture of these tech companies, making them more responsible, more ethical.
Right. It's a big challenge, but it's one we need to tackle head on if we want to protect ourselves from cognitive warfare.
Okay, so we've talked about education, we've talked about regulation. What about technological innovation? How can technology be part of the solution when it seems like it's also part of the problem?
Well, technology is a tool, right? And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. We need to use technology to fight back against those who are using it to manipulate us.
So what does that look like? Are we talking about like developing some kind of AI-powered truth serum or something?
Not quite, but there are some really interesting things happening in that space. For example, there are researchers working on AI systems that can detect disinformation in real time, you know?
So like a lie detector for the internet.
Kind of, yeah. And they're also developing tools that can help people verify information more easily. Like imagine a browser extension that can tell you if a website is known to spread misinformation.
That would be pretty cool. So it's like we're using technology to fight fire with fire, basically.
In a way, yes, but it's more about empowering individuals, giving them the tools they need to make informed decisions and resist manipulation.
I like that. So it's not just about building walls to keep the bad stuff out. It's about giving people the knowledge and the skills they need to navigate this complex world.
Exactly, because ultimately, the best defense against cognitive warfare is a strong and resilient mind.
Okay, so we need to be informed, we need to be critical, and we need to use technology wisely. Sounds like a lot of work.
It is, but it's worth it. The stakes are high, and the future of our minds, our societies, even our democracy depends on it.
No pressure then. Okay, so what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, in the final part of this deep dive, we're going to explore what the future might hold, What will a world with cognitive warfare look like? And most importantly, what can each of us do to prepare for it?
All right, I'm ready for the future. Bring it on. Welcome back. So cognitive warfare, it's a lot to take in, right? Like, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around the fact that this is happening all the time.
It is. It can be really overwhelming to think about, like, all the ways our minds can be manipulated without us even realizing it.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, like, what can we actually do about it? I mean, it's not like we can just unplug from the internet and live in a cave.
Right. That's not really an option for most of us. But there are things we can do, practical steps to protect ourselves.
Okay, so give me some actionable advice. Like, what can I do right now to make myself less susceptible to this cognitive warfare stuff?
Well, first and foremost, you got to be skeptical, Don't just believe everything you see online.
Easier said than done, right? Especially when it comes to things you already agree with or they confirm your biases.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. We all have our biases, and those biases can make us more vulnerable to manipulation. So you
Yeah.
got to be extra careful with information that seems to confirm what you already believe.
So it's like question everything, even the things you think you know for sure.
Exactly. Double check your sources, look for evidence, and always consider the possibility that you might be wrong.
That's a humbling thought, but okay, I get it. Check your sources. Don't just take things at face value. What else?
Diversify your information sources, Don't just get your news from one place or from people who all think the same way.
So, like, break out of my echo chamber. Talk to people who disagree with me. That sounds kind of scary.
It can be, but it's also really important. You need to expose yourself to different perspectives, challenge your own beliefs, and learn how to think critically.
Okay, so I'm questioning everything. I'm branching out. What else can I do to build up my, like, mental defenses?
Build strong relationships, Connect with people in the real world, not just online.
So, like, hang out with my friends, talk to my family, join a book club, that kind of thing.
Exactly, because one of the things that makes us vulnerable to cognitive warfare is isolation. When we're isolated, we're more likely to believe the things we see online, even if they're not true.
Makes sense. It's like if you're all alone in a dark room and someone whispers something scary, you're more likely to freak out than if you're surrounded by your friends.
Yeah, it's
Y-
kind of like that, but on a psychological level.
Yeah.
When we have strong social connections, we have people we can talk to, people we can trust, people who can help us sort through the noise and figure out what's real.
So it's not just about what we think, it's about who we surround ourselves with.
Absolutely. Community, connection, that's what gives us strength. It makes us more resilient.
Okay, so I'm feeling a little more empowered now that I actually have some control over this.
You do. You absolutely do. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about how cognitive warfare works, the better equipped you'll be to resist it.
That's what we've been doing this whole time, right? Shining a light on this stuff, exposing the tactics, so we can all be more aware and more prepared.
Exactly, because awareness is the first step. Once you're aware of the threat, you can start to take steps to protect yourself.
So it's like we're not just victims here. We can fight back, we can be proactive, and we can build a more resilient society.
That's the message I want to leave people with. This isn't a hopeless situation. It's a call to action, a chance to wake up, to be more mindful, and to take control of our own minds.
That's a great message, and it's definitely given me a lot to think about. So to all our listeners out there, be skeptical, be critical, be connected, and most importantly, don't be afraid to question everything. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into cognitive warfare. It's been a real eye-opener and hopefully a wake-up call. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected.